of things I wish I could unsee. Lights, you bastard! Lights! It's log! Just had a John K. flashback. Yeah, I occasionally watch Ren and Stimpy. Sometimes I wish I hadn't. Everything that made you kind of laugh a little bit, there was that other thing that either grossed you out or completely weirded you out. Like John K. has this ability to draw the hottest women in the world and then have them doing gross things. got one that made me laugh though. With these hands, I hold the fate of millions. Kept having this. Ren had a monologue. I think it's time for me to start taking Kempo again. No, it was like I was looking up there and I didn't realize it was Okinawan. And that's when I started learning under Coach Gallahan. And the problem I always have is I start out with an martial art and then just never been able to finish it. The people who do it are dedicated. I mean, there's 3 martial arts that I definitely want to finish. Well, 4. I studied Tai Chi, Kempo, or Okinawan Kempo, Aikido, and Jiu-Jitsu. One of those guys, man, I'll spend like 6 months to a year learning it and then never use it again. Thankfully. I can usually talk myself out of a run away from a fight. Some of the reason I don't think I get into fights is because I don't think I'm physically imposing, but other people tell me I am. This big black guy, and I was like, I'm not that big. It's like I'm 5'7" and under 200 pounds. It doesn't matter, all they saw was an outsider with muscles, and it's like seeing a loose dog. Does anybody know who he belongs to? He looks vicious. I'm the misunderstood pit bull, man. I don't have any problems with him. I have him around my kids all the time. See, I'm lovable. Doesn't matter though. In every expose and movie and media experience, an outsider gets about the same amount of love as a pit bull. Maybe if I scratched it, I take that back. There was a rapper named, or is he a rapper or something, but a musician named Pitbull. He seems to get a lot of love. Oh, I'm sorry, he gets a lot of love from the outsider community. Insider Americans probably don't know who he is. Some PR guy says, well, the outsiders seem to like this guy, so let's go ahead and book him. Does halftime shows. They put him on fitness TV. some bald, light brown outsider. Everybody comes up with terminology, you know, they used to call them minorities. Now the outsider Americans are the majority, so I guess I'll have to come up with a new term for all of us. Like I said, no matter how you slice it, all the racist terms, all the negative stereotypes, at the end of the day it comes down to who's the outsider and who's the insider. Like Ben Carson, try as he might, no matter what, at the end of the day he's still an outsider. But he's an outsider being partly accepted by the insider community. Partly, I said. Because like I said, one screw up and he's out. That's why it's a bad road for Ben Carson. You're with a community that will only let you screw up one time. As compared to your other guys that you're running against who are insider Americans. You got Bush, whose family has repeatedly screwed up, and yet somehow he's a serious contender. It's not that people don't learn from the mistakes of the past. It's that they get comfortable with the devil they know. Nobody wants to admit they were wrong voting for this family 2 times over. Oh, 3 times over. They weren't that bad. Yes, they were. I am halfway tempted to see what kind of exterior they go with on that. Faux brick or faux limestone. Wow. No, I start seeing things and it's like, maybe they've always walked down this sidewalk and I'm just not noticing them. Now they're starting to tear up this street. Well, it needs it. I was just thinking John didn't deserve that. I never understood that living arrangement, but it made sense. It was smart. I think I've said it a million times. He was a student here while he was living over there. And I'm not sure if he and a bunch of friends bought the house as like a commune. he and his friends bought that house as a commune, or did they, did he just have like a relative that owned it? I was about to get really pissed because I think I got to go to the bathroom again. I was like, what is it about this section that gets my gut boiling? It would be kind of funny if what's happening is someone found out a way to harness brown noise. And so what keeps happening to me is I keep getting hit with brown noise. That's what civilization does to you. Like something that before civilization began, if a man had to go to the bathroom, he just walk to the location, squat down, and take care of it. Not a big deal. But in civilization, I can't just go somewhere, squat down, and take care of it. I do, and everybody's looking like, oh, look at that dirty guy. He has no shame, no dignity. Doesn't he know that we all squat in pre-designated areas? We didn't used to. There are a lot of households out here tonight. I've just been re-examining the illegal immigration problem or issue, and it just comes down to enforcement and knowledge. You know, all the myths that we have coming out is just a matter of we flat out don't know who all is here. And the problem with not knowing who these people are is we don't know how to help them, and we don't really know how exactly they're hurting us. It's not about deportation, it's not about crime rates, it's not about using welfare and everything else. It's really about communication. I think it was what the guy was telling me yesterday about how he had a meeting. They were talking about how to resolve conflicts. Sometimes the conflict gets worse because of the fact that nobody talks to each other. We silently sit there and stew and think the worst of people instead of just talking to them and finding out the truth. And then we let it fester and grow, and next thing you know, it boils over into this mess of really nasty politics. I know illegal immigrants or undocumented workers, whatever political term you want to put on it, but the bottom line is folks that we don't really know about where they came from and if they're here legally, is they're being exploited. They're being exploited, they're driving down wages, they aren't getting the help they're needing. And so their problems become our problems because everybody is so intertwined. You can't just put yourself in a gated community, throw up a wall, and think that all the problems disappear. Those problems can get in the wall. And a lot of times those problems are invited inside the wall. And it follows the same pathology of a pathogen. It gets in, there's close proximity, one person that gets infected, another person that gets infected, you know, the infection spreads. And what was supposed to be your protective field winds up becoming your tomb or trap. I was thinking about that as I went to that community meeting. As I went into that community meeting for our neighborhood, the police were talking about the crime rate, and they said, well, overall the crime rate's declined, and we really haven't had any problems with this. And this is mainly a lot of the rise in crime we're seeing is domestic issues within the family. And it was kind of sad because that was almost an admission of defeat. The cops have gotten an apathy to the point where they hear something about domestic violence or violence with the homes or families, they just tune out. Because there's really nothing they can do. I mean, there's very little they can do about it. They encourage you to leave, or they try to mitigate the situation by getting rid of the offending party. And then families don't press charges, or they clam up, or they don't say anything. And so the violence continues. So the problem we're having in this country is families there is an increase in the number of broken up or dysfunctional families. That doesn't mean that the percentage is getting higher, it just means that the amount is getting higher. Does that make sense to you? In other words, there overall are more families. It's just that also with the increase in more families, there is also the increase of more dysfunctional families. And so now it's come to our attention. With social media and the democratization of news, because everybody's got a camera, hence yours truly. These things that we didn't see much or talk much about because we were all isolated and you know, we got things in written news form, we're now all acutely aware of because of social media and cameras, the ubiquity of cameras. And what we're finding out is everybody's having that problem. Somewhere in this affluent neighborhood, possibly over in that gated community, there's a very dysfunctional family right now whose problems are threatening to spill over into the rest of the neighborhood. They've tried to keep wraps on it as much as they could, but like I said, it's boiling over. So maybe that's the solution to all our problems. We have to stop treating, I hate to sound like a hopeful liberal in this whole thing, because my politics kind of lean center-right, but we're almost having to start to admit, hey, we're going to have to start acting like one big giant family, and if you are having a problem, chances are your problem is going to become my problem, so let's talk about this. The bottom line is, we're going to have to start having communities again, and these communities are going to have to start talking, or have to start communicating. You know, that's what killed the black outsider community. Was that they used to have these strong families and neighborhoods that would band together and say, look, we're all the outsiders here, so we have to look out for each other, and that's what they did for a long time. And then something happened. I don't know, maybe it was social, maybe it was economic mobility, maybe it's welfare, whatever it is, but something eroded the black community to the point now where we have this dysfunctional crap happening and nobody's doing anything about it. Grandma's raising the kids, but grandma needs some help from other people in the community. And that is part of the black guilt that I feel. It's like, and a lot of the black guilt that a lot of guys feel is like, you left that dysfunctional mess, and that's why you always hear about athletes going back and doing these things, and you're like, why couldn't they just leave those people alone? They can't leave those people alone because of black guilt. It's the same as white guilt, only you're the inside man. In which you want to do something, you want to help out folks, but at the end of the day, people have to help themselves. And they have to want to change. They have to want to sit there and say, like, wait. It's not just about me. It's about me and how I interact with everyone else. And so I need to change in that respect. That's why theft would go away right off the bat. You know, one of the things I've been reading in news articles, they're saying that these later generations have a lack of empathy. I was like, of course they do. They were grown, they were taught to fend for themselves. They were really taught how to live within a certain structure. Well, you know, you see those people over there, they believe this, so we don't really have anything to do with them. We've heard that this is what they do, and that's what they do, and that's why they're different from us, and that's why we don't want anything to do with them. I thought that way a long time about Muslims. Because I believed everything I heard, and I had this hateful, thought in my head, and even still, I kind of have some, I have some qualms. I have qualms about any organized religion. That's really what that's all about. Anytime somebody wrote a book 2,000 years ago telling you how to live your life without proven scientific data or fact, and you don't revise it every once in a while, and you don't sit there and examine why, if you're not allowed to question why you live this way, that's the problem I have with organized religion. And the problem is that Islam is now where Christianity was before the 18th century. You just do what we say, and we're the ultimate authority, and you defy us, we'll make life hard for you, and people blindly follow, and the next thing you know, you got people whipping themselves in the back and spreading diseases and doing all sorts of stupid stuff. That's Christianity before the Renaissance. People doing things because their religion told them to, not because they actually thought about it per se. And the guys who actually did the critical thinking were branded as heretics. And you see the same thing going on in the Middle East a lot of times. And I think I read an article in Foreign Policy magazine. They were talking about Wahhabism, whatever you want to call it, but the bottom line is Islam went from being moderate and progressive to backsliding. And that's the problem we're having right now. We're always scared to death that the Muslim community that might be next to us might be backsliding. You know, if you're a monotheist, religion is very simple for you, at least it should be. I believe in this one God. This one God gave me this set of rules. I'm going to try to keep my belief in that one God as simple as possible, and if somebody doesn't believe that, then I will pray for him, and that is it. I will not try to convert him by the sword. I will not try to treat him like he's second class. I will simply believe that somebody's looking at. That's really what religion should be. It should be, look, I just believe that somebody's looking out for me. And if you want to get to know the person that I think is looking out for me, here's what you do. But it should not be, hey, I got somebody looking out for me so I can get away with anything. Hey, I got somebody looking out for me so I got to make a good show of things. Like, no. No. That's where religion runs into the problem. But what I also learned from talking to the Muslim community at Richland College, a lot of these problems that we're having right now in the Middle East and a lot of the problems we have in the United States, some of that problem was caused by the Western world really messing up these places. The Western world went to Asia and messed up Asia for a long period of time. The Western world went to Africa and messed up Africa for a long period of time. And it did the same thing with the Middle East. It did it with Latin America. All these places had these imperialists and colonialists go in there and just wreck things. Now, I may sound like a commie when I say these things, but it's true. Because back in those days, it wasn't about, hey, we're going to help out the local people. It's like, no, hey, we're going to exploit the local people because they got something we want. And the best way for us to get what we want is to divide and conquer. And they did that everywhere. And that's why everything's a mess today. The rest of the world is just now figuring out how to unfuck this mess that the Western civilization's ancestors left behind for its children. That's why I kind of get mad when people are talking about they're conservative, because what they're saying is, I want to go back to the way my grandfather had it. I said, well, your grandfather exploited people. Your grandfather said, look, it's the American way for Americans and fuck everybody else. That's conservatism. When they talk about the quote-unquote free market, it's not the free market. That's an illusion. It's the exploited market. Like I said, the dream of the free market is I've got an idea, I market my idea, I make the money, I get to keep the money. Nobody's against that. That's a pretty cool idea. Except that's not the way it goes. It's, I have an idea, I market the idea, I make the money, I keep other people from being able to market a similar idea. And I try to keep their money. And then I want to keep more, and then I want to take the government's money and make it and have more money for me. we talk about capitalism, you know, we're talking about everybody can agree on a capitalism where everybody works and everybody gets to eat. But we can't agree on a capitalism where I work and I eat some and then someone gets to eat more. They eat off of my plate. People are worried about the poor eating off of your plate. Well, in reality, it's the rich. The rich are the one who gets the breaks. The rich are the ones who get the welfare. The rich are the ones. You know, they do the examination and they find out that 95% of your tax dollars go to the affluent companies. And then they want to sit there and go after that 5% crumb that is aiding the poor. Because you start questioning everything, you start saying, well, 50% of our dollars, or everybody keeps breaking it out, this is how much goes to national defense. And national defense, once again, is that whole conspiracy theorists diatribe about the military-industrial complex. And it's true, man. They got, most of it is true. Some of that stuff's way off in left field, but every year you have to justify selling bombs, missiles, and building tanks in a world where they seem to be used less and less. Like, I saw something interesting this week, or in the last couple of weeks. There was a coup in Burkina Faso in Africa. And the funny thing is, it looks like the coup might be mitigated, not by somebody going in, the UN peacekeeping going in and bombing the hell out of the guys and having a long fight. But the weird thing is that the threat of sanctions against this country and being isolated from the African Union and the rest of the world, that's got the people, the coup leaders, sitting there saying, all right, well, let's talk this thing over. It's like, well, you've got this much time to talk, otherwise we're going to go forward with this. Every single time it seems that nowadays in this civilized world, if you want to go after something, you go after the money. That's what broke Al-Qaeda. That's the funny thing, is it wasn't drones and bombs and caves, it was freezing their bank accounts and going after the companies that aided terrorists. Suddenly Al-Qaeda doesn't have the funds it needs to carry out its plans. It made the organization inert and easy to pick off later. What killed the Klan it was the civil rights movement and all that other stuff, but at the same time it was going after the Klan got sued for a lot of its activities, and the Southern Poverty Law Center and all these other organizations went after them in court, and it just broke their backs financially. I think about the pharmaceutical company that tried to jack up the price of this thing, or has jacked up the price of this drug 5,000%. And now they've got a big bullseye on their back. People are dumping stock in pharmaceutical companies because they're afraid of how they're being perceived. And in a world where everybody's connected with social media, and your money can, and everything happens in a split second with your money, going after the money hurts. The love of money is the root of all evil. Well, apparently it's the root of all action too. No, like I said, I used to be able to run these streets or run the median pretty, like the medians used to be pretty nice to run. And then the folks in the city haven't been keeping up with the upkeep of these medians. There's giant holes in it, like that one. There's debris. And then sometimes they flat out don't cut it. And then there must be an increase in the amount of assholes in the city because now I'm getting more and more traffic. Anyway, there you go. Solved all the world's problems in 1 hour. This is an introvert. Like I said, you want to know what goes on in an introvert's mind? I just told you. The big picture, like they say. I was like looking at it, I was like, that can't be right about introverts. I was like, yeah, okay, I do think so. They're partly right. I think about that, and that. On a daily basis, this is all I think about. The solutions are there. The solutions are not difficult. But what it was almost that the solutions are about change. The solutions are about discomfort. And so you have groups of people who fight very vigorously to stop this from happening. And so it winds up becoming Churchill's prophecy, or Churchill's theorem. And Churchill's theorem is the American people will do the right thing when they've tried everything else. Or I guess I paraphrased it and I probably did it badly, but the bottom line is what he was saying was, we'll try everything else but the right thing. And if everything else fails, we'll say, all right, no more tax cuts for the rich. All right, we're going to start building mental health facilities. All right. Everyone in America gets the same equal access to health care and education. All right, we're going to deal with the immigration issue like it's a refugee crisis and not like it's a criminal offense. All right, we're going to deal with prison reform not as a punitive thing, but as a therapeutic thing. You want to reduce the prison population, it's like I was saying earlier, go after the money. You want to stop drug dealers? Go after their money. So you can now sue drug dealers in court, and you will pay this. You'll go to jail for a while, but you'll also be paying fines, and you'll be paying restitution. Man, I can't be a drug dealer. You got to have a license, and then on top of that, man, they sue your ass off. That's what's going to kill the drug industry, is legalization, regulation, taxation, and litigation. It's not going to be stopped by guys in riot gear with assault weapons and handcuffs and building bigger prisons. Ironically, it's going to be stopped with the pen and the pocketbook. Nobody goes through this frustration of catapulting heroin over the border or growing fields of poppy in Afghanistan or allowing young boys to be sodomized and abused because they like it. They're doing this because, hey, these guys make money. Go after the money. You want to stop the problems in Afghanistan? Stop sending the money. You want to stop the stuff that's going on in Iraq? Stop sending the money. You want to stop ISIS? Stop giving ISIS money. Because no matter how many bombs or tanks or planes you got, you still got to feed soldiers, you still got to clothe soldiers, and you still got to pay the people who provide all that stuff. People might say that's a cynical way or a simplistic way of viewing things, but the Arab Spring started because young men couldn't get jobs. The whole ISIS thing and the Syrian civil war is about Sunnis fighting against Shiites because Shiites take all of the top positions and take all the money and leave the Shiites and the Sunnis in the dark. So the Sunnis are saying, hey, there's more of us than there are you. We're going to start kicking your asses until you give us some respect. And once again, that points to what I'm saying about colonialism and imperialism. You got Russia spending all this money to prop up a Syrian dictator. Not because they think it's the right thing to do, but because they have skin in the game. It's all about them wanting to build pipelines and ship their oil. And oil is the only thing that the Russians seem to be able to make money at right now. So you got to keep the Syrians happy in order to keep your oil in your pipeline flowing. That's why they were meddling in Afghanistan. That's why we're meddling in Afghanistan. 9/11. Bin Laden's dead. But we're still in Afghanistan. Saddam is dead, but we're still in Iraq. The Iranian Revolution is come and gone. The Shah is dead, was exiled and dead. But we still have dealings with Iran. The Panama Canal has been built. The ink is dry on NAFTA. The United States is still involved in Latin America with the Monroe Doctrine. In fact, I don't know if they finally gave. Did we finally give the canal back to, or give the canal to Panama? I remember that when I was growing up. It was like all these, because I had a Panamanian teacher. She kept bringing it up. She was like, yeah, they were supposed to succeed control of the canal over to us in this year, and it didn't happen. And it kept getting pushed back. I mean, even the English eventually gave Hong Kong back to the Chinese, but that was contentious as well. That's a weird deal, man. Hong Kong is capitalist. Hong Kong has democracy. Hong Kong has freedom, but they're considered part of China, and they don't bow to Chinese sovereignty. And it's like on paper China owns Hong Kong, but in reality Hong Kong is on its own, or it's supposed to be left alone. Like I said, it's a weird deal. Then again, the Chinese are weird too. They resolve their conflicts not through fighting, but through pressure. I don't know, the closest approximation, the closest approximation I can think of is the Chinese remind me of the Romulans in Star Trek. They don't do anything directly. They don't meet anybody directly. They do everything through proxies. Cunning, calculating, and secretive. The Romulan Empire wasn't meant to emulate any one group. They were meant to emulate like the Roman Empire, and probably some Eastern empires as well. Like the Klingons are supposed to emulate like a warrior. They were a warrior civilization, so they kind of emulate the Mongolians, the Japanese, a lot of Native American nations. And even the Scandinavians or the Vikings. I'm just kind of fascinated with Viking culture because they're not what we thought they were. You know, everybody thinks of the Vikings as these bearded, horned helmet wearing savages that ran around plundering everything. And the reality situation was they were a warrior civilization that had a lot of polymath qualities. They were great farmers, they were statesmen, then religion leaked in there, and all of a sudden they became religious. The people they had plundered. And then they stopped plundering and they started becoming bankers. It's kind of funny how that works out though. It's like you start out, all your civilization starts out as gangs harassing some established civilization. And then eventually what happens is, it's always the same stage. First you're harassing a stronger civilization, and then you take all the plunder that you have, you launder it into legitimate enterprises. And the next thing you know, you become legitimized, and you're doing business with the same civilizations that you had once harangued, or you become like them. That's what's happening with drug cartels. That's what happened. That's what's going to happen with the Taliban. What's starting to happen with the Taliban. Is first they went in there and took over like a gang and ran things with an iron fist. Then they got fought and pushed out and treated as criminals. And now they've become partly legitimized and they have a spot at the table of governance in Afghanistan. That's what's going to happen with drug cartels. That's what's starting to happen with the whole legalization movement. There will come a day. People say, you can say I'm out in left field or whatever, but the bottom line is someday there's going to be a powerful recreational drug lobby. Excuse me, there already is. there was always a recreational drug lobby in this country. It started with tobacco and alcohol, and eventually it will end with opiates, marijuana, and hallucinogens. I don't even know what they'll call their empire. Like I said, I call it the recreational drug empire. That's pretty much all I can think of. But there'll be a fancier term for it in the future. I guess they'll call it narco lobby. The narcotics lobby. And eventually they'll become legitimate, and eventually they'll start getting sued by the government for how they treated their customers. Someday, the narcotics lobby. Oh, this is loud, man. Someday there's going to be a narcotics lobby that will settle out of court for like $512 billion to the United States government for the way its products did harmful things to its customers. And there'll be public service ads. Now, don't you consume too many magic mushrooms. Marijuana is best enjoyed in moderation. You should not handle this if you are pregnant. It'll have all these disclaimers on it, and it'll show pictures of worst case scenarios, and then people will continue to use and abuse it. Because it's, and once again, I'm gonna start sounding like, I guess I'm sounding more center left than center right, and I'm kind of glad to hear me say that. Maybe I am more center left, but every time this government, because the way the United States of America, the way the United States laws are framed, its citizens get a lot of room to roam when it comes to laws. Either the law doesn't exist, or the people are supposed to govern themselves. There are a lot of assholes out here tonight. Either the law doesn't exist, or the people are supposed to govern themselves. And so you find yourself hitting a really mean libertarian streak when it comes to a lot of the laws in this country. And that's especially when you come to the narco state. There really wasn't supposed to be this big giant. The solutions are a framework of how to tell people what to do, what they can and can't imbibe and ingest and inhale. Imbibe, ingest, inhale, and inject. The bottom line is the government was not meant to tell you what you can put in your body. The reason we have these rules in place is because a lot of individuals could not govern themselves. And so when that happened, a big panic ensued, and a lot of well-meaning people petitioned the government, "You've got to do something." And the government said, "All right, we'll do something," and it was just Project Overkill. That's what people are afraid of when it comes to libertarianism and I guess conservatism. Is there's this big fear of, we've seen this pattern of, we had a slight problem, we had a manageable problem, but people pumped up the problem and made it bigger, and so they asked the government to step in. When the government stepped in, the government always steps in with overkill, because the government is like asking a giant to come help you with your problems. You're saying, I've got a fire in my house. Giant, help me with my fire. So the giant looks at your house on fire and it stomps it out. Where you could have went to your neighbors Whereas you could have gone to your neighbors and had them hose the house down, or try to control the burn the best way they can through smaller means. The government came in and just stomped out your whole damn house. And all of a sudden the fire is out, but you have no house. And the government says, well, you're welcome, and here's the bill. Wait a minute. Aren't you going to give me money to rebuild my house? Well, I didn't start the fire. And once again, that's the problem we're having. You know, a lot of our problems we're having is it's not that the big government's not doing anything, it's that the smaller governments are mishandling the tools that they were given to stop the problem. Case in point, Ferguson, Missouri. The military gave them all this riot gear for something serious to happen. And suddenly you've got overzealous local law enforcement using these special weapons and tactics in overkill. But once again, that points to engagement. If you don't want to get to know these people in these communities, then of course you're going to overreact when they come by. When you're going to overreact at everything that they do. No, I'm just tripping out. Like I said, it's got to be about 9 o'clock out here. Of course, it looks like the traffic is kind of petering out. But yeah, the bottom line is the local governments aren't communicating with the communities, and so what's happening is every time they do something, it's a surprise, a shock to them, and they overreact to it. My neighborhood's filled with a bunch of first-generation Hispanics. First-generation immigrant Hispanics. So they don't know the culture, the laws, the language, and some of them are poorly educated. And a lot of that points to some of the problems we're having. But rather than try to find some way to communicate with them, and it's getting better. But at first it was like, we don't want anything to do with these folks. Farmers Branch did that especially. We don't want anything to do with these folks. Don't give them houses. Don't give them services. Don't let them in your neighborhood. That's somebody else's problem. And Dallas didn't really do anything like that. They just said, look, we'll do the best we can, but we can only do so much. And a kind of cool thing happened. In my neighborhood, what's starting to happen is you're getting a lot of we're getting a lot of second and third generation another wave of assholes But what's starting to happen here in Dallas, and unfortunately it's all happening with a nexus of weird things, is we're getting a lot of second and third generation, a lot of second and third generation Hispanics, and they're starting to build community organizations, and they're starting to communicate with local officials, and we're starting to see some progress, but it's, like I said, it's painfully slow. Because it's not just immigration from Latin America, it's immigration from everywhere. We're getting immigrants from, we're getting folks that are immigrating from other states. Chicagoans, Californians, New Yorkers. And they may speak the language and know the culture. What am I saying? They may speak the language and know the laws, but they come in with their own culture, and all of a sudden, there's a clash. Well, this is how we did things in Chicago. Well, you're not in Chicago. This is how we did things in New York. Well, you're not in New York. And what angers me is you got folks in Dallas who heard about the way they do things in Chicago, New York, and all these other places. And so they either try to A, appease these folks, or B, exploit them. Oh, you came from New York where they're used to paying $1,300 or $2,000 a month for a small apartment. We're going to make you feel right at home. We're going to start raising the price of rent and houses in this city. I mean, the cost of living, like in my first years of the adult life, rents in this city were low. Like for a bad apartment, it was $400 a month. For a decent apartment, it was somewhere like $600, and then for like a really good apartment, it was $800 a month. That's all been skewed now. There are those who try to tell you the supply and demand. It's not the supply and demand, it's just plain greed. Like I said, to avoid the economic conflict, that is higher rents and higher home prices and higher everything else, you try to run. You try to run away to another city than deal with the conflict. And we're reaching a point where there's nowhere left to run. I'm not going to say it is what it is. Like I said, there's a solution to all this stuff. But once again, it's really about how hard you will, or it's all about conflict. How desperate are you? How driven are you to fight someone's antagonism on the issue? Everybody talks bad about the Koch brothers, but the Koch brothers are just part of the problem. It's really in who is confronting and who is having conflict with the Koch brothers. The new CEO of that company that is jacking up the price of that age-related drug. How are people going to resolve the conflict? Who's going to have the conflict initially? And it's a funny story because, like I said, the guy has 2 strikes against him already. He's an ex-hedge fund manager. And then there's the fact that he's pumping it up 5,000%. We can understand 250% or something like that. No, he went way up. It was like he was playing the game of Monopoly. That's what it was. I mean, he's a hedge fund manager. This is what we did in the hedge fund business, and that's why you failed. You don't go into another industry and try the same thing. You especially don't do it a few days after acquiring the company. Like, it was very impatient. It's not like he gradually pumped it up. One day, hey, it's now $750 per pill or whatever it was, or per prescription. Like in the case of the ERs, I think they were saying for like generic ibuprofen, it's like 25 cents a pill. And then they were looking at ER costs, and the ERs are charging like $1,000 for ibuprofen, for aspirin, for things like that. And the reason it happened like that is because it was a gradual thing, where all of a sudden one day you were paying a little bit more, a little bit more, a little more. And suddenly you're at the ER paying $1,000 for ibuprofen. Now, why aren't they fixing that? Well, maybe they are. It's just taking time. Or they had grown so comfortable the way it is, it would be a pain to kind of change it. But I do think that is kind of funny. Like, the guy did this in 4 days, and he was caught doing it on social media, and he got blasted to social media. Meanwhile, medical facilities and emergency rooms are doing this every day. You know, an IV is nothing but a bag of salt water. It's a bag of salt water that you or I, if we had access to it, we can get it. If you and I had access to it, We can get a bag of saline for like framework of, I think they were saying it's like $5 or something like that. The materials in it is, like I said, it's salt water. Even with labor, probably comes out to barely $1 worth of material and labor to make a bag of saline. But you go to the ER and they pump it up to thousands of dollars. And that's what the next president is going to have to deal with, is continuing to rein in healthcare costs. Everybody talks about these bubbles. Well, that's another bubble. There's a healthcare bubble, and there's an education bubble. No, I never looked over there and realized that never realized that was an assisted living facility. Which means they are always seeing, somebody's looking out their window and seeing me talk to myself with my camera, if they can see me. You know, somebody probably looks and says, there's this guy that always walks the median. Yeah, you see it? Yeah, the dude with the camera. It's like, what's his deal? That's the problem with extroverts. You always want to know what you're doing. I was like, you know, through enough deductive reasoning, you could probably figure it out without asking me a lot of questions. What I'm doing is chronicling, exercising for my health, and also exercising for my mental health, for my physical health and mental health. There's really not much more to it than that. If you see me pointing my camera at somebody who ran through a stop sign or is legally parked or something like that, that's not the reason. That's not the reason I got the camera, that's just a side effect. said, it's kind of weird. I'm already part of a rare group to begin with. I know that 50% of this nation is introverted. Is it 50% of the nation or 50% of the world? I forgot what I was reading. But the bottom line is a higher percentage of people are introverted already. Well, it makes my my existence all the more isolating. Because unfortunately, I'm also an introverted and intellectual. It's like, yeah, there's only 1.5% of the people are this category in their personality. It's like, son of a bitch. I was like, wait, sometimes I alternate to this other personality. Well, that personality is 1.2%. I was like, son of a bitch. So no matter what, I'm on an island all by myself. How do introverts get together? Dumb luck. That's how I found David. Actually, okay, it's not exactly dumb luck. I was at an Institute of Higher Learning in the parking lot conversing with classmates about up-and-coming things on a test. David overheard us, and David built himself. He introduced himself to us. Everybody else got creeped out, but I was fascinated by this man. So we went and we had a long conversation. Believe it or not, this happens to me a lot. You know, because if I'm going to die, it's not going to be from fear. Or at least fear from meeting people. That's why, you know, a lot of introverts get mad when you call them shy. One lady said it, or one lady and one guy said the same thing. He says, it's not that we're shy, we're selective about who we get with. In my form of introversion, or my personal personality, I'm attracted to the weird, the strange, the slightly off. Because I myself come from that background. And so it's like a kindred spirit. I mean, I'm telling you this as I'm talking to a camera, looking like I'm talking to myself mostly, and walking the median of a major metropolitan street. I'm acutely aware that these things are not normal. But the reason I do it is because statistically, it's kind of a long shot that I'd get hit in the median. It could happen. One day it may happen. One day it may happen and somebody will say, that stupid son of a bitch, he wins the Darwin Prize. He should have known better. But then those who study statistics says, wow, that was like a 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 chance that was going to happen. And the stats just weren't in his favor. But here's the thing, whether I walk here, or let's say they start putting a sidewalk over there, either way, statistically, I'm going to get hit. Statistically, I already have gotten hit a couple of times. Not like, you know, somebody hit me and dragged me a couple of feet, but it's more like I go into the intersection and the dude nudges his bumper right into my hip. Boop! And if he hadn't seen me at the last minute, I'd have been propped on top of his hood. And it's not until you get hit with a car that you underestimate just how powerful vehicles are. That car hit me in the hip and pushed me, and it would have had no problem just barreling down the street and hit me like a speed bump. I mean, I felt that powerless. Like if I fought back, it would just be a waste of time fighting back. That's how it feels to be completely helpless. Like when you feel the strength of that automobile pushing into your body, and knowing there's not a damn thing you can do about it. It's a sobering and a mortality rendering experience. Now that's happened to me at slow speed. There are those who get hit at high speed, and that's what people confuse. It's like, what you mean? Well, I usually equate hitting being like the car's going full barrel. I was like, no, either way, it's going to cause injury. For me, I got a bruised hip and a slightly strained knee and you know, some ligaments and stuff. I got hurt, but just not severely. Like I said, I've been hit, bit, sometimes accosted. Never been mugged. Knock wood. Thank God. But like I said, there's just these random people that come up to you. I think I got it on video one time where there's this drunk lady. She was drunk because she had an open beer, asking me if I was a cop. And I was like, no ma'am, I'm just a guy recording things for a video journal. Because I tell people about the things that happen to me when I walk. And the problem is that extroverts know this already, but introverts have to figure it out. It's that there might be a high degree of bullshit in everybody's conversations. Tick, 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 statistical X. Sorry, every time I see an X on the ground, I just feel like I have to do that. It's kind of like a checkpoint. Anyway, introverts start to learn how much bullshit there are in people. But an extrovert realizes that they're listening to people's conversations for long periods of time. It's like, you know what, I bullshit a lot when I talk. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that the guy who's talking to me does the same thing. People think I'm bullshitting when I'm telling them the stories about what happens to me on walks. And the camera shows them, no, I'm not. Remember what I told you about the dogs? Yeah, it happens. I've got myself on camera getting bit, getting accosted by a gang of dogs. They were little dogs, but still it's annoying when you're running and all of a sudden you get a bite mark on your leg. They saw it yesterday in my jogging video. I'm jogging. I'm in the zone, man. I'm running down Reb's Chapel. I'm having my Zen moment. And I mean, I got rocked out of that Zen moment. I look over and there's this gigantic dog just barking his head off. Woo, 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 woo. Woo, woo, woo. And I'm looking over and I'm like, okay, well, all he's done is barking, so I ain't got to worry about him. Still, if I turn my back, if I make too many sudden movements and I start running, that stupid thing will probably chase me. So I play it cool. I walk by, I just look at him. I keep waiting for the owner to show up so I can get his face on camera. And of course, they never get on the camera. They're always yelling, "Sparky! Spike!" I'm like, yeah, yell at the dog. That works. Cesar Millan, you never see Cesar Millan calling a dog out by its name. He just looks at the dog, stiffens up his chest a little bit, and it makes a sound. And that dog snaps to attention. But Cesar Millan learned a long time ago how to look like somebody you don't want to fuck with. And it works on just about every species. Because when Cesar Millan does it and the dog gets in it, goes to attention, the funny thing kind of happens if you slow motion it and you look at the people who own the dog, they do the same thing. They snap into attention. It's like, yes, Mr. Millan, what do you want? What is your bidding? I guess what kind of makes me laugh is like if you took Cesar Millan and he looks like he's a small Latin man, but still, the way he looks when he's looking like he looks in authority, you put him in one of those Banana Republic general uniforms and he looks like Generalissimo Milan. It's like, you don't want to fuck with Generalissimo Milan. That dude had 25 guys executed, and that was the guys he liked. He looks like the dictator of Banana Republic. That's when he's what he said, he's calm, dominating. Because dictators have learned the same thing that Caesar Milani learned a long time ago. It's about appearances. And dogs catch on to appearances. If you look like you're sick or drooping or hurting, dogs gonna come over and comfort you a little bit. But also some dogs look at you and they're gonna take advantage. I mean, if you stiffen up, bristle, look tall, make yourself look bigger, a dog's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't think I want to mess with that. That looks like it can involve some pain. I might win, but it might be a Pyrrhic victory. Dogs know what I think a dog knows what a Pyrrhic victory is. I think instinctually, it's like, look, I can win, but I get really fucked up doing it. So let's not take this battle on. That's the thing about instinct. Some animals are smart enough. A lot of animals are smart enough to realize when it's not worth the fight. But you get some human beings who've got this gigantic brain, and sometimes the gigantic brain can work against you. And what everybody else in the animal kingdom can see as a Pyrrhic victory, you only see as a victory. It's a convergence of assholes all of a sudden. And I think that's what the Republican Party doesn't see. Is they're talking about we're going to stick to what we do best. Well, what you do best went out the window. When Reagan died, so did his brand of conservatism. That's really what that signified. He died. CNN covered it for a couple days. And then the world said, well. They said, that's one bastard in the cold ground was what everybody else is thinking. And I keep saying this to conservatives, and it pisses them off. It kind of pisses them off when I say it, but it kind of makes them laugh. Ronald Reagan wasn't a great president. He just acted like a great president. Remember, this guy was an actor. He made it look like he was doing something, but he wasn't really doing anything. He had a bunch of people that got him in office. They were doing everything behind the scenes. Kind of like the guy said in The Critic. All he was doing was taking naps and eating candy. And then every once in a while, they'd poke him in the ribs. Up, Ronnie, get up there and sing and dance for your supper. And Ronnie would sit there and come up, hey, it's President Reagan. Look at how strong and powerful and proud this man is. We're doing great. No, we're not. He just makes you think that. It's all smoke and mirrors, man. If you look great, they give you presidential libraries and name submarines after you. If you are great, your programs survive long after you've shed off the mortal coil. That's my problem with Ronald Reagan. He left no lasting legacy. So people say, well, he defeated the communists. He didn't defeat the communists defeated the communists. You look at Putin over there in Russia now and you see the commies have been defeated. They just changed. They just rebranded. Alright, you remember when we said that we were communists? Yeah, we lied. Sorry. We're actually oligarchs and a kleptocracy. It's like, well, how's that different from any other point in Russian history? Well, it was the Tsar and his kleptocrats. We just got rid of the Tsar. And that's really what happened in Russia. It was just like they replaced the strong man with a guy who was born into it, with a guy who was elected into it. Still the same Russian strongman, still defiant to the rest of Europe and the world, and still getting his ass handed to it by other Asian countries. Because as much as the Russian people try to claim themselves as being Europe, they're really kind of a hybrid. They're Europe and Asia. So what happens is every once in a while they go appealing to their European sister, accept me, I'm being bullied. And then his Asian older brother says, hey, little brother, looks like I got to bring you down a peg. And that's what Russia is. Russia is a country pinned between two powerful siblings. One that nurtures it, and one that puts it back in line, that disciplines it. Finally, somebody who stops at a stop sign. Meanwhile, this guy, oh no, he stopped. All right, way to go, man. You see, that's why Turkey probably won't be getting into the EU anytime soon, because Turkey is like Russia, only it's part European and part Middle East. And right now, being Middle East is not popular. Like I said, it just angers me because I still have my mind wrapped around the history of these regions. What Africa used to be. What Asia used to be. What the Middle East used to be. These were civilizations that wanted nothing to do with Europeans because they stank, they were ignorant, they were backward people. It's like, look, just give them some silk every once in a while and just stay the hell away from them. They look like they've got something that we don't want. They've got diseases we don't want. We don't know where they've been. To the tables have turned. Remember how you used to treat us like your smelly, weird neighbor? We're going to break up all of your empires. We're going to make you the weird one. And that's really what this is, man. At the end of the day, your whole life is about overcoming your childhood insecurities. That's why some people become cops. That's why some people become politicians, and that's why some people become brutal dictators. Joseph Stalin never overcame the fact that he had an overbearing mother who tried to drive him into being a religious fanatic. And he wound up becoming a secular fanatic. Good job, Mom. He wanted to become a religious fanatic, he rebelled against you and became a secular one. Ironically, as a secular fanatic, he probably killed more people than he would have if he became a religious fanatic. The bottom line is, growing up in that household, he was going to be a fanatic. It was just which one. Was it going to be for the Lord or for the world? I wonder if my battery's gone out by now. Let's check. Nope, still going. Still not hear my speaker. Still going? Probably. But someday Turkey will be part of the European Union. Because the European Union will get a lot more, will start learning what Islam's really about. And Islamists that go to the country will be kind of mellowed out a bit. They're going to start sleeping with each other, of course. And they're going to find a happy compromise or middle. The bottom line is they're getting to know each other after thousands of years of fighting each other and hearing rumors about each other. But they should have been doing all the damn along. Turkey will be part of it, and they'll be... Here's Turkey, it's part of the European Union, but it's the gateway to the Middle East. And they'll have beautiful children because of hybrid vigor. And women will be able to control what happens to their own bodies, and blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is Middle Easterners will start becoming sexually free, but sexually responsible. and won't have to rely on religious creed or dogma to kind of control their nature. They'll just be rational people that say, look, I can control myself. I don't feel the need to control other people. That's why I kind of cringed when they were talking about the Germans were taking in all these Syrians. I was like, that's going to be one hell of a culture clash. Because the Germans celebrate nudity and they don't really make a big deal out of it. And then you got people who come from a country where they're encouraged to cover up every damn thing. I'm having impure thoughts, I've got to cover that up. You're like, no. You got to learn why you're having the quote unquote impure thoughts. And rationalize that, look, man, this is normal, but this is something that's controllable. This is something I shouldn't make a big deal out of. But the bottom line is you got folks that come from a repressed culture, sexually, dietary, every other area you want to cover, and they're going to a place where everything is pretty liberal. Like I said, the only drawback about the Germans is, well, there's a couple of drawbacks about the Germans. The Germans have a tendency to overthink things, hence their over-engineering. They work too damn much, and sometimes they can be repressive bullies. And that's what I was saying, them going to a place like, the Syrians going to a place like Germany, their troubles have just begun. Not to mention the Germans love pig. It's like they've got like thousands of ways to prepare pork. And you've got a group of people coming in who swear off pork. People who drink, like I said, sausage and